Yes, I'm here. And welcome, everybody. Delighted that you're here to join us for this conversation that takes us to the next level, hopefully, in this process of not only understanding but applying first-century Aramaic forgiveness. And yesterday we had an interesting conversation, and I got a text, so I'm wondering if Sonny is with us, because she sent me a text yesterday after the show. She had quite a bit of processing. And I wonder, Miss Jeannie, is Sonny there?
She is not with us yet.
Oh, okay. Well, you remember that she realized that the burden she was carrying in her shoulders and her neck were related to her need to engage in some forgiveness, which she did. And I got a text from her late yesterday saying that her neck and shoulder pain were gone. So she definitely did a look. It was an interesting conversation. And Miss Susan had a few thoughts too. It sounds like Susan perhaps was right in there with the conversation. So Miss Susan, I wonder if you have any thoughts to share with us today. I was delighted to hear your message to Jeannie, and she shared it.
It was ongoing. Poor Jeannie was being barraged with my running commentary. I could have been Sonny. I was every bit of it was, sorry I'm a little bit, just came back from a wild first day of a summer program with the refugees, and I'm completely wiped. But I'm here. Yeah, it was wild. The mind shifter you gave her two of them. The first one was so right on. The second one was not as close, but that might mean that it's even better than the first one. The way you work, you can kind of find your way into, if somebody's in denial. But the first one was the stronger and more powerful. I stand up for myself. The easier it is for me to stay connected to love and gather support for my cause.
And as you worked with that one, what did it bring up for you? Did we lose you, Susan? Are you there, Jeannie? Have I gotten lost? Well, I appear to be connected. Well, I'm not sure what has happened. If you can hear me, my phone has gone silent on this end. So I don't know whether we've lost you, Susan, or whether I've lost my connection, or just what's happening. If you can hear me, I'm going to disappear for a second and go see. I know someone was coming to the door, a tradesman, to take care of something. So maybe Jeannie is going to do that, and I'm being heard loud. Let me just check in. I'll be right back.
Michael, you're still on. Her call just dropped. She just came back on.
Oh, cool.
So
okay, go ahead.
The show is still going.
Awesome.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened either. All of a sudden, I was talking to my dead phone.
Okay.
Anyway, so sorry about that.
So what was moving for you as you worked on that mind shifter?
I felt the power of the words affirming my ability to do just that.
Yeah.
I can't explain it. It was as if I got permission. And I in my guts, I got permission. But I loved how she was a lot calmer than I usually am, and I have to hand it to her. That's something I admired very much, but that's beside the point. And there were differences because when she said, I love this guy, and I don't like losing track of people or getting them out of my life. And I was thinking to Jeannie, I said to Jeannie, oops, that's where I'd love to get this person out. I don't feel much love, and I'm kind of sorry about that. But it's the pathology there all around. I mean, I keep having to remind myself that here I am again. I've been in this position before, and the interesting thing is, I've been reading my old journals. Tim Bingham and I have had someone living with us. Most of the time we've been married. We had a third floor that had a bathroom, and we would invite people to live who had come on difficult times, but we never had one that was homeless. We all know this is the second one. And both of the homeless ones did not work out so well. The first one, we made sure she was out by 6 weeks. It was really quite toxic to us. And so we just found ways of helping her into another place, and that didn't work out for her, but it was out of our hands. With this one, it's a very helpful person, complicated though, but quiet. Tim and I are very quiet. We didn't want to have a lot of company and interaction, social interacting going on all the time. But the others were friends. One young friend of mine got a divorce and had nowhere to stay and stayed with us for about a year before she found herself an apartment. It was a wonderful time. And she was working, but just needed that time. And I could list a bunch of others. And so we were sort of a little looser about our space than we might have been, a little more ready to open it up. And I think it's a good thing in general, but it doesn't always work. So when you asked Sonny, well, what's your responsibility? I mean, you're doing this again. Why is this happening to me again? I'm thinking, I haven't answered that one yet. I just didn't have very good antennae out this time. So,
right.
But I do feel empowered by the mind shifter.
It sounds like it had a visceral effect on you, like it really hit a core energy shift in yourself. I mean, you might remember Joe Bryson, he called into the show. Actually, he shared it a couple of times, but he was at an intensive in Oak Island a few years back, and he had back pain ongoing. Was sitting on the couch listening to a lecture, a presentation I was doing during the intensive, and just had that kind of a visceral shift, and that sounds like what happened for you. I mean, he walked out of that session with his back pain gone that had been with him for quite a while.
Well, and
so it sounds like something like that
Sonny.
Level shifted for you.
Yeah, and with Sonny, obviously something shifted too. She had physical, knock on wood, I haven't had physical manifestations of the conflict, but I certainly have emotional ones, and it was like synchronicity in capital letters, because that late afternoon I saw the man who first took Michael in, and that relationship lasted 6 weeks, and Michael the friend made sure that this man didn't stay any longer than that. What happened, though, is this man bought Michael a van to the tune, used van, $7,000 out. He bought that for him and set him on his way. And the van turned out to be a lemon, and Michael ended up with us. The van wasn't worth much at all, and he just got a very bad deal. But he had been vetted by this friend. I knew Michael was safe, and maybe he had some emotional problems, but it would be safe.
Right.
But where am I going with this? Oh, yeah, I was saying late yesterday afternoon, I was talking to this man. He walks his dogs in the park, and I run into him. And he said he just had a talk with Michael, and Michael has been accepted at a place in Florida. All that's lacking now is paperwork. And as soon as the paperwork is done, and most of it's in, he'll be able to go down there. And I told you my son even agreed to drive him down in my son's van with all his stuff, because my son's not working.
Oh, that's
he would
pretty
like
generous.
to see his sister. Yeah, well, he'd like to see his sister, and he thought it would help Michael out. I have not heard a peep out of Michael about whether the paperwork has been done. I don't think so, just because it's supposed to arrive in hard copy, and I see the mail before he does most of the time. I can check with him. But Michael told this man he has no intention of going to Florida. And when the time comes, which is what happened to us before, my son had a tiny house he had built, and he was letting Michael have it for a very nothing rent. And on the day we were going to move Michael had a complete emotional breakdown and said he couldn't do it. He couldn't live in that tiny house. And there were good reasons for it, so we invited him back in the house, and we tried to figure out something else. Now I know I think it's change. I think Michael's terrified of something new. He's comfortable, although he's not productive. He's not performing at all, and that's very damning hard on a creative person. So, but I got word that I am to expect that this is going to happen, and that mind shifter just made me feel I can do this. I'm going to say, nope, we're taking you down. We're leaving tomorrow, and you're going to be packed, and we'll help you pack, and that's take it or leave it.
Holding the space for you to stand for that.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah,
Clearly time. You've earned it.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I feel so, yeah.
I think your generosity with him has been more than ample.
Well, you have to, Jesus said, you will always have the poor with you. And I always thought that means we've got to bend over backwards. We've got to help. And what does that mean? That's a question, Michael. You want to say something about that? Can you tell me what it said in Aramaic? Was any different?
I'm not aware of any different take on it from the Aramaic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, there's a line that we hear every time we get on an airplane, and that is, if the face masks drop, put yours on first.
Yeah.
And
right.
Certainly within the means that we have to support someone, support is definitely appropriate. And going to the point of being taken advantage of, I think, is a mistake in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And you've certainly gone well overboard for him. So holding the space at his new place in Florida serves him well.
I hope so. And my daughter's down there. She said, look, Mom, I'm too busy to spend a lot of time, but I am in close touch with this particular building and these people. They know me and I know them, and I can make sure they do right by him, and I'll watch out for him down here. He's got a real support system built right in at both ends.
That's pretty powerful.
It is. He has no arguments whatsoever.
And I'll hold the fantasy that on the way back, Jonathan will make a stop in Bristol, Virginia.
Oh, wouldn't that be fabulous?
Maybe do a still point session or something.
That would be fabulous. And I told you that Luke said he wants to work with you. He's just not in a position yet because he's still in college and he's working a job and all that stuff. And he is still doing this terrible power person thing. He broke up with the girl. She left him. It was a healthy thing. He knew it was. He was in terrible pain. They're back together again. So this is happening over and over and over again. And he really could use your help. But I'll let you know when the time is right. That's a wonderful offer, a nice resource to know. Jonathan, I'm not so sure he'd be willing to stop and do that. He's a different can of worms. Wonderful
I understand.
Can of worms, but Yeah. So I just have to say that lying here on the couch doing my breathing, you kept asking me, are you breathing? And I'm going puff, 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 puff. And Jeannie was nice enough afterwards to even text me and say, do you need Michael to call you? I mean, talk about support. I felt on top of the world. I felt as if you just popped a latch and suddenly came out. And thanks, Sonny, whenever you talk to her. She's got to be the best person alive. I mean, it was great.
We'll pass that along.
Yeah.
All right. Well, any other thoughts for you?
Of course. Who's on the line? Anybody pressing one?
Just you.
Is Sonny there for? Are you sure?
No, not yet.
Sonny is here, and I can put both of you on.
Oh, she is. Pardon me. Okay, let's go for it.
Okay.
Sonny,
Hello.
Susan.
Hello. Isn't it beautiful? We bless each other.
Yeah, Sonny, I can't thank you enough. Your work was my work, ran totally parallel until the point where you said, he's like an uncle to us. And I thought, nope, not here. Our guy is not an uncle to us. And the second was, you said, I would love to, I don't like to let people go out of my life. And I'm thinking, generally that's true for me. But in this case, I'd like the person out, permanently out. So, but your work was fantastic and helpful, and I was breathing right along with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And you're welcome. And that's what this is about, is setting us all free of all of the unnecessary stuff, right?
Yeah. So
and I shared,
I'm interested.
Susan.
What, Mike?
I was just going to say that I had shared, Sonny, that with Susan, that your neck, you texted me that your neck and your shoulder pain were gone. So congratulations.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
neck, shoulder, and hip, as far as that, in the mindset.
Oh, the hip
was
shifted
very,
as well?
Yeah, oh, yes. And
awesome.
yeah, that's standing up. And interesting to look at my daughter's x-rays and my own. She'll be 25, 24th of July. It is definitely a genetic type thing, but, I supersede all that because it's whatever this is it's gone. And I haven't even spoke to my daughter. The issue that triggered me was, in fact, my daughter's phone was not on. They've reduced her work schedule down to 3 days a week, which is why she had the need in the winter to rent out rooms. It became perfect for this person, for him, and far more accommodating for his physical needs, straight out spine surgery. And she needed him, he needed her. We care for him. His family was either unable or unwilling. And he has become like family to us. So, but I made it clear to him that, unlike what he had the luxury of experiencing here, this was in fact going to be very temporary for him, and that he would have to assert, well, he's back to work, been back to work a few months, 3 days a week, and he now has his retirement benefits to count on, so he's not hard-pressed financially. The only reasons are the ones that he creates as to why he has never done anything differently. And as I said, this time regulatory speech with you, Michael, served me very well, and I cannot thank you enough, because I had texted him before I even thought I was going to reach out to you with the work. I thought I had a good handle on it, and then I realized that feeling of impasse that we mentioned, and I had texted him, Michael, and I said, I said it to him as well. Didn't hear it until I heard you. You heard me and brought it to my attention. I said, I'm not even pissed, Larry. I'm done. My words to him was, I'm done. And I didn't feel that until after I set forth to do the work, because I, in fact, am done. And I am on the edge of tears. I had an opportunity to call him after settling
Breathing
in.
with you?
Yeah. After settling in, it's like, you know that we cherish you. We care very much for you. You're like family to us. I will help in any way that I can, support you. If you need anything, let us know. It's just come to the point of where the rental options are no longer available with me in mind. It's just that day has come. It's come to an end. And he full circle again. Well, I guess I could just, I don't know, I guess I could just live in my car. That whole guilt trip thing that we had spoke of. And I said, well, if you feel that's necessary, I said, but if it's really, comes to that, you can always go to the Christian Center. You can stay there, and maybe there's some new doors open. Maybe you're needed there. And this time, and then Brent
Good response.
made the observation. He got mad and he hung up. Now, that is a first, because I have been very assertive with him many times. And we're like brother and sister. We have our little quabbles or whatever, just non-regulatory communication with people. And this is the first time he ever felt it, got mad, and hung up. And that's, Brent made the observation. He said, yeah, well, this time he felt it and you don't. You cleared yours, now it is his. And I said, exactly. So...
And notice,
and then,
you can predict when you stopped fulfilling his goal, his stress went up. And when his stress went up, he did what his power person did to him. That's his healing opportunity, getting angry and leaving. You can, it's as night follows day. You can rely on that. So if the communication is there, you might invite him to look at how it felt when his power person abandoned him, hung up, and got angry. And that might open the space for another level of his healing as well.
yes, and I didn't obviously have that opportunity as of yet. But in
Right.
that course of conversation, whether it was truly my place or I know that he heard me. He's been around me 8 years. He understands, how I roll and most of the concepts thereof. I said, this is really, like I said, this is not an conversation of anything other than what you make of it. I said, but I want to offer you the observations that I've made for you. I said, I met you shortly after your divorce of 25 years, which was very amicable, but very unusual circumstances. And I said, however, your last 3 roommates, counting now he's my daughters, are with women. And I said, well, I'm very sorry for what Kathy did to you. Women are not responsible for supporting you. And in the context of your feeling...
And you're sorry for that because...
Well, the non-regulatory here, I said, so...
There's no such thing as non-regulatory. Hold on a second. Let's put the cards on the table here. I noticed that when you were talking about this time, the regulatory speech was accurate, like it was an exception. Here's what my offering is on that thought. Regulatory speech, your speech system is infallible. It will always inform you as to what's going on in your unconscious if you listen to it. There's no such thing as non-regulatory.
Okay.
So you might just want to put that in the hopper and
okay. All right.
Recognize
I'm writing. I had to use a carpenter's pencil. I'm in the garage, and apparently didn't bring my pencil. Construction pencil here. Okay. All right.
That was it. Just there's no such thing as non-regulatory. Regulatory speech will always, 1,000% of the time, tell you when you pay attention to it, when you say things that you say, oh, I didn't mean that, that your unconscious meant that. And that's just the way it is. That's the way the whole speech system works.
Right, and I usually catch those little keywords like should and sorry, and that one did come out. Yes, I know you did.
So what does sorry mean? Here, let me offer what my offering over the years of working with people, when I hear them apologizing for something that they have nothing to do with. They live in guilt and fear of blame, and they take the blame before somebody else lays it on them. And I'd invite you to make that your next piece of work, that you clean this thing up, that you're responsible. And this is something that's been done to a lot of women. And there are two sides to that equation. When I say I don't want to be responsible for my life, somebody else will come along and jump in and take responsibility. But, I think there are many women who just automatically take this I'm sorry approach. And it's like, what do you have to be sorry for? I can, offer, if I have empathy for what you're suffering, I have empathy, I'll hold the space for your healing. But to say I'm sorry is an indicator that some part of your mind is holding blame for you for what, in this case, your words were, she did to him.
Right, and this would be...
It's not your responsibility.
I see the interconnectedness of it maybe being another piece there of that sense of responsibility for other people's la, and then everything we touched on yesterday. So thank you. That is the ongoing, maybe the unfinished sense. I mean, I felt very complete in the work yesterday.
Yeah.
But
next piece of the work.
More to it. Thank you.
And your worksheets I would offer would be on over-responsibility, on guilt or other people's circumstances, on perhaps working with how did it feel, and this is just a guess, I may be totally all wet here, but how did it feel when your power person blamed you for what was going on in their lives?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's that would be the next level.
Yeah, well,
and
then done with the conversation. Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, you go ahead.
I was just in that little piece with him. I said, and the observation being that cancer, resentment causes cancer, and this whole female, on running for you, leaning on women to be supported back for the support you had given a 25-year marriage, and then your cancer resentment shows up in the form of tumors on your spinal cord in terms of being supported. And I said, I think it's just really time that you heal through this stuff. And I'll help you get there. I'm here for you. And I know you understand this conversation. And he's like, well, fine, I'll just boom. He was like, I'll leave. I said, well, you're 65. She's a 24-year-old girl. And her company, her friends, feel like she lives with her father. And it's just not a good fit. It's simply not a good fit. It was temporary. You're through that, and it's time to move on. And I don't know what that's going to look like for you, but that day has come.
Yeah.
Because we've been working on this conversation for 3 months. There's another excuse, see. Yeah.
Okay, let's put a hold on it. Stop the story. Hold.
Yeah, I know.
Brakes. Stop. Full stop.
Uh-huh.
Remember yesterday we talked about how when a reality comes up that clearly is something that's happening inside of me, when I live in denial and dissociation, I move away from that circumstance, having a conversation about them.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm stepping into responsibility and healing, I move away from that conversation or that situation, having a conversation about me. Now, my offering is, you just uncovered, with that little piece of speech and the acknowledgement of your power person blaming you, a major piece of work around over-responsibility, apologizing for something you have nothing to do with, or actually it's not apologizing, it's being sorry. And notice what I'm inviting you to observe what your mind did. This is called automatic pilot. This is the automatic decision system. Notice that you just touched into a really, it might even be the biggest piece of work of your life. And you went and carried on a conversation about him. And I'd invite you to notice that, that's a way, if that fits. And I just propose to ask you to take a look at it. And that's just a way to avoid what I just uncovered in myself. Now, my offering would be, with what you uncovered, that your healing process would lead you to a conversation about, this, when I was a kid, when blame, gee, they still are, or no, they're not in my life, they're gone, whatever. And to step into processing what you just uncovered. But just notice how your automatic decision system kicked into a conversation about something totally and completely different than what you just uncovered for yourself.
I guess I'm not understanding where we went. I was just finishing what I was able to offer and bring. There was no conflict in the conversation with him, and just it was a healing experience for the both of us. And that's where I told him, I actually need to thank you, because while I was able to, learn a lot about myself in this experience in the totality, this is what I would like to offer you, because this is really not a bad thing. And you can do it. You can get out on your own. These are the observations, and just to let you know that these are the observations. And I guess maybe, I do constant work on myself making these observations, and it's like a lot of, like the Louise Hay Little Quick Reference book is very nice. It's like, okay, I feel this here, and then search for the why. Where'd it come from? How come? I like what color is it? What shape is it? What temperature? That type of thing. That's very nice, Michael. I like that.
So I'm going to take one more shot. I'm going to put one more effort into inviting you to back up.
All right. I don't maybe understand which part of the conversation you're referring to, but go ahead.
Well, let's back up. You spoke about having said you were sorry for what his wife did to him.
Yes.
And I invited you to look at why you would be apologizing for something that you had nothing to do with.
Yes, and that was good.
And my offering was, that's a major piece of work. And then we went to, in conjunction with that, how that very likely is a power person dynamic, and you acknowledged it when I asked how it felt when your power person blamed you. So what I'm working to point out to you is we opened a major issue for you that I would offer is perhaps one of the core issues of your life. Does that make sense?
It does, and I just heard it.
Okay. What I'm going to invite you to do is to go back and listen to this again when the show's over, because it's pretty blatant. And then, as I asked you about how it felt when your power person blamed you and acknowledged, you gave a laugh and acknowledged, that was like the story of my relationship with him. But then you went on like nothing had been opened, nothing had been said, and you started to talk about the conversation with him again. A conversation that I think you'd already, my offering would be, I'd already heard it. I think it had been completed. So what I'm inviting you to look at is the possibility that that might be an habitual way that your mind covers up major issues when they open for you. And if that's accurate and you can catch your mind at it, wow, you're going to take a giant leap in your work. That's all.
Well, maybe I'll need to go back and do some, like the one power person, as I said, I had multiple parentage. One, the foster mother who actually had custody of me, used to tell me primarily and her other children while she was doing her thing, and having her personal meltdowns and so on, blaming us for what was going on inside of her, that we were going to cause her to have a heart attack. And I no longer lived with her. I left home at 14 and was happened to be that day with my maternal aunt and got the phone call. And I remember my aunt turning to me and telling me that Barb had had a heart attack. And the rush, I don't think I went to school that day. I think I stayed home of, oh, wow, this is, how am I not? And I remember, but I'm not even there. How do I make that happen? So, yeah, I might go in and do some more work around that, Michael, because I lived with that chirp in my ear, and constantly that would be, you know, and then when that day came, it was like, but I'm not even there. But I still felt it. So thank you. I've got this written down.
Remember that there are actualities. You know, what I hear you describing is there was an actuality that happened. Your stepmother had a heart attack. You weren't there, and you were willing to take blame for it. And what happens in that situation, and this is why we need to catch the mind at its game. This is why breathing is such an important thing to enlist, Rukha to enlist that elemental force that brings us healing. Is because those programs, those thoughts play out, and you know, there's a fact, there's an event that happened. Barb had a heart attack. You weren't there, and your mind, because of the thoughts you held in it, substituted the idea that you were to blame for something that happened and you weren't even there. That's reality. That's perception taking the place of the actual world of the Creator, the actuality of what happens. And so I'm going to make a suggestion that if you ever even think of speaking the words, "I'm sorry" again, you stop mid-sentence and clean up your mind. And if there's a circumstance, and circumstances happen where we do things that are off base, we make mistakes, we blow things, and we are responsible for them, and it's perfectly appropriate to apologize for that. Certainly, your mother being somewhere else and she has a heart attack, nothing for you to apologize for or even think, how could I possibly be responsible, except the thought disorder that's up for being forgiven now that it's surfaced. But we have an apology tool for the circumstances where, gee, I did make a mistake, I did do something inappropriate, and it is my responsibility, and that is to simply acknowledge, gee, I was off base with what I did, and I apologize for what I did, and then in the future, what I'm going to do, and you offer a replacement behavior that's going to bring healing to that circumstance. And that way, you know, when people say, "I'm sorry," in essence, I'm sorry for this. So now you've got the person who's being told, you know, that you're sorry. You've got their creative mind joined with your creative mind on what you're sorry about, and the tendency is going to be to create more of it. The apology tool that we've developed goes in the opposite direction, and it speaks of responsibility for what I did and what my correction is going to be. So now I have the person that I'm offering the apology tool, I have their mind focused on the correction, and my mind focused on the correction, I'm going to have a whole lot better chance of doing the correction rather than playing out of the old pattern.
Right.
But
Exactly.
I'd suggest it's a really serious piece of work to undo this power person message that you could possibly be to blame for things like this gentleman's interaction with his former wife.
Yes. And I very much appreciate that observation, because if there's anything lingering that I thought I'd got through, thank you. I spoke
I'd
with
re-listen to this show with pen in hand and catch every subtle nuance of your own regulatory speech, and letting go of any part of your mind that wants to make this piece of regulatory speech valid and this one's not, because regulatory speech is infallible. It will always tell you what's going on in your unconscious.
Yes. And there's so much of that, too, right now, of being very consciously aware of not only our regulatory speech, but the context or the actual structure of some of the words that we use it's what do you refer to as the automatic pilot, or it's been as much a part of our culture that we're trained for it, and it's a lot to be brought to our awareness about our words, and then certain words, how to use them. Exactly. So, I was able to... Oh, go ahead.
No, you got another thought finishing that topic. Go ahead.
Well, I went on in this piece of work, Michael, and I was speaking with one of my daughter's friends. And I was explaining this to her, and she's a brilliant young lady. She's 38 years old. And I said, you get this spiritually, so on. And she said, yeah, that's why I love hanging out with you. I'm like, okay, well, I said, I was looking at this whole dynamic and surrounding Larry, and she's like, I've never understood, she said, I have never understood why Markela, my daughter, doesn't just simply tell him. And I said, well, this is the beautiful part of what happened today, Renee, is that it was brought to my attention as to why that might be and how this has gone on. It's been in our generations. And I said, hopefully we've done the necessary work to getting that frequency and that dynamic changed for she and I both. And she said, I see that. I get that. I so get that.
Yeah. And chances are, probably 99 out of 100, that Markela's power person, Mom, had many moments of unconsciousness where Markela was to blame for what was going on for Mom. And so the conversation we've just had about that.
Probably very aware, more so than you might imagine, that would never be a truth for her. That, and I brought her, So, but this idea, because I do get where, she said that, like Renee said, that makes sense because, well, he's sick. Larry has cancer. I said, Larry can have cancer for a long time, but it's not our responsibility, and that's where, my daughter would be manipulated, if you will.
Notice we've just shifted topics again. I'm inviting you to notice how your mind works. I invited you to take a look at, take a breath, take a breath, stop, take a breath, like big breath. So I'm going to offer once again an observation that you might want to make about how your mind works. You shared with me how your power person made it really clear that it was regularly your fault for what was going on in her life.
Right.
And my offering would be, or what I asked you to look at, was, and I would put the odds at this being true. Now, I'm totally willing to say, and I might be totally and completely out in left field, but I would say the odds are about 99.9999% that as your mother unconsciously made you to blame for what was going on in her life. It was a good old family feeling. The pattern still goes on. Notice you up until just a few minutes ago were still apologizing for things you had nothing to do with. I would say the odds that Mom unconsciously played that dynamic out with Markela are pretty high. And so I just invite you to look. And as I offered that conversation, watch what your mind did. It went back into a conversation about him and cancer. And I'm just inviting you to observe how your mind tricks you into, gee, you uncover something, or you get a chance to uncover something. And this is a typical thing. I mean, we've all done this one, but catching your mind at it can be tricky.
Yes,
and so you might just want to take a look
I
at that.
appreciate your observation very, very, very much. And
Cool. Awesome.
yes, we will in
Awesome.
fact leave it at that. But I appreciate you very much, Michael. And yeah, so there's lots of support for my daughter in and around us with like-minded others, and cannot thank you enough, really. And I like that we have, that I think that might have been where I said I really didn't know how I still felt, and I felt pretty complete in it, and still processed the energies late into the night. And maybe this is some of the residual on the, even the automatic pilot concept of the word sorry, or the concept of sorry. And just ever still that trained life thing of ever feeling responsible for hurting someone or what have you, or hurting their feelings, that's a huge dynamic. I would think it is for me anyway, of being very consciously aware of, okay, and if it hurts
so
them,
it might be a good conversation to have, a good conversation to open with Markela, and there's probably another big opening for both of you to do a monumental piece of healing work.
Yes, her rearage was, her dad was a huge influence in multiple stepmothers and that type of thing too. So, yeah, that's a thing, and I definitely
so many opportunities.
Oh yes, yeah. So
cool.
I appreciate you very, very much, Michael.
All right. Delighted. And earlier in the conversation,
so happy for Susan. Yes.
So earlier in the conversation, there was a point where you were talking about the shift that occurred physiologically, and I had the strong inclination, because I've just done some writing as part of the quantum still point on Rukha de Kudsha and the power of the breath and the influence of breath, and how if we utilize that elemental force, if we invite it into activity, how it can shift things like what was going on in your neck and your shoulder and your hip, and can do it in a fraction of a second. And so just for everyone who's listening, I want to redefine, I've kind of expanded in the context of the quantum still point, because I'm looking to get people to understand at depth the energy dynamics that go on inside of each one of us. But this is a piece from the quantum still point on Rukha. So the breath, known in the ancient Aramaic language as Rukha de Kudsha, when we become still enough to breathe consciously and listen, makes available the intuitive guidance system that resides within. This knowing has always been with you and is 100% trustworthy. Rukha is literally defined as a feminine, elemental force that undoes the effects of your errors, the past, and teaches you the truth. It requires being still and listening. In our modern computer world, we might think of this force as a super processor. that consistently brings truth to mind and effects by reaching through all time, space, and generations, the undoing of every aspect, every result, every inclination, and every errant inclination or behavior. The net result of Rukha is being invited into action, and you have to invite it because your free will never be violated. When you remember that the word sin in Aramaic is simply an archery term that means off the mark, is the undoing, the liberation from all sin and its effects. This is a particularly important principle to understand for those laboring under the greatest quote-unquote sin of all, generational fear. So just to make the point that, when you realize that the Harvard research that we've talked about, where they've shown that in a time frame where 10,000 measurable units of electrical activity are happening in the system, and in that same time frame, all we can be conscious of is 9 bits, that when you think about, if you're looking at a generational pattern, and you've got, metaphorically, we could say a 9-bit processor, how could we ever process that much data? How could we ever bring correction to that? And fortunately, Yeshua 2,000 years informed us that there was this super processor, this feminine elemental force that brings truth to mind. And it can literally reach through all space, all time, all generations, all effects, all causes, when I give permission for it to enter and make the change. We're not stuck doing these monumental works on our own, which, if we were on our own, would be impossible. We're not. Course in Miracles says it beautifully. You are not asked to do the impossible here. All you're asked is for a little willingness and an invitation, and to do your part in the forgiveness process. And your part, if we quote from the Course, and it's exactly the same as the ancient Aramaic, what the Course says is, definition of forgiveness: let go all the things you think you want, your trifling treasure put away, and leave a clean and open space within your mind for healing to come. None of us is left on our own. However, because we have free will, I can say no to that power, and I can be hanging out there on my own, seemingly hung out to dry by the Creator. But it's only our denial of the entryway of that feminine elemental force that will do those things for us. And you remember that, going back again to the idea of sin being an energy that's off the mark. The sins of the fathers, of course that's not sexist remark, parents, mother and father, will be passed, yea, unto 3 and 4 generations, says the Creator. And then, perhaps the most important part of that passage, after the comma, 3 and 4 generations, says, yea, of those who hate me. Now, that's a Greek misinterpretation of that passage. The Aramaic word there that's been translated as hate is not as in a love-hate relationship, but those who are separated. The Creator's saying, those who are separated from the active presence of my love can't process through these generational patterns. And that means that the only advisor we have for behavior is what have our generations done? You know, what kind of emotional turmoil, what kind of stuff is in carbon-based memory that comes up to prompt us into behavior? And if we have that veil closed and we don't have access to the active presence of love, then the only advisor we've got is our past, carbon-based memory, generational patterns, the good old family feeling. And to look there can be an absolutely monumental piece of work, because for most of us, it's gone on for so long. That melody line from that song comes up to mind when I think about that. How long has this been going on? Forever. And I'll say that, you know, over the last 50 years of working with people one-on-one, it's rare. I mean, rare. I mean, I can count on one hand how many people over the years, when they're introduced to this work, or anything that truly resembles it, I can count on one hand how many people can remember their parentage doing anything like this work. 99.999% of people are the early adopters of this work. Nobody in their bloodline had a clue or had ever done any internal healing work. And so it is a monumental shift of mind to take on. And to me, it's just such an important reminder that we have literally this feminine elemental force in us that knows how to handle it all. And the only thing that will restrict the ability for those energetic patterns to be handled is that we have some use for them. We hold the beliefs that the family system had. Well, if anybody ever attacks me, I have to have this rage to be able to protect myself. Well, you can say you want to get rid of your rage, but if you think you've got to hold on to it for a reason, you have not given permission for it to be undone, and it will not be undone because you have free will, and that free will never be violated. So this super processor consistently brings truth to mind and can reach through all time, all space, all generations, undoing every aspect, every result, every implication of any errant inclination or behavior. And so joining you in breathing and recognizing that that power is within you, and the way you invite it to go to work is to breathe. Yes, the mental assent, the agreement for it is powerful, and the activity of it comes when you choose, in the middle of your muddle, rather than being stuck in your story, to actually breathe. So breathing with each and every one of you, appreciation for lending your energy to this understanding, and holding the space for the work that we do here. It's monumental, and our appreciation is deep. And we hold the space that you're going to have the best year yet of your eternal